Don't you dare touch that piano. Do you hear me? Kids like you don't belong in this house." The words hit Jamal like a slap, even though the woman had never laid a hand on him. His fingers froze just inches above the shiny white keys of the grand piano in the center of the living room, the one he had been staring at from the moment he walked into the mansion. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, almost as big as the tiny bedroom he shared with his mom back in their apartment on the south side of Atlanta. He had only wanted to press one key, to hear how it sounded in real life, instead of on his cheap keyboard at home. But now this woman's voice made his heart slam against his ribs. She stood there in her tight white dress and high heels, blonde hair perfect, lips twisted in disgust as she looked at him like he was something she had found under her shoe. "Can you not hear? Or are you just ignoring me?" she snapped, stepping closer. "Step away from the piano, now." Jamal swallowed hard and moved back, his sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered. He hated how small his voice sounded, how weak, but he also knew his mom needed this job. She had said it over and over while they rode the bus for almost an hour to get to this huge gated neighborhood. "Mr. Hayes is giving me a chance, baby," she had said, squeezing his hand. "This house cleaning job could mean steady money. Just be good, okay? Stay out the way, and we'll be fine." So Jamal had promised. He had sat quietly at the little corner table with his homework while his mom scrubbed and dusted, only walking around when she told him to bring her something. But then he'd seen the piano. He'd never been this close to a real grand piano before. Music was the only thing that made him feel free, and for a few seconds he had forgotten the rule about staying out of the way. The woman in the white dress had made sure he remembered Angela. His mom hurried in from the hallway, a basket of folded towels in her arms. The moment she saw the scene, the angry woman, Jamal's scared face, the piano between them, her whole body tensed. "Is everything all right, Miss Victoria?" Angela asked, her voice polite but tight. She wore her cleaning uniform, simple black pants and a gray shirt. Her dark hair tied back, a small cross on a chain resting against her throat. She had been in this house 3 times now, cleaning for Daniel Hayes, the rich man who owned half the hotels in the city, but this was the first time she had met his fiancée. This was also the first time she had regretted saying yes when Daniel told her it was okay to bring her son after school. "No, everything is not all right," Victoria snapped, pointing at Jamal like he was a bug. "Your boy was about to put his dirty hands all over this piano. Do you have any idea how much this cost? This is not some toy at a thrift store. This is art. This is for people who can actually afford to be here." Angela set the towels down slowly, her jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She looked at Jamal, who stared at the floor, shame burning his cheeks. Then she looked back at Victoria. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, even though the words tasted bitter. "He didn't mean any harm. He loves music, that's all. I'll make sure he stays in the kitchen from now on." Jamal's shoulders slumped. He wanted to say something, to say he had washed his hands 3 times already, to say he knew how to touch a piano without hurting it, that he had been teaching himself songs on a broken keyboard for 2 years. But he stayed quiet. He knew that when you were poor and black in a house like this, one wrong word could cost you everything. Victoria rolled her eyes. "Yes, keep him where he belongs," she said. "This is not some community center. This is Daniel's home. He has important guests. We can't have this wandering around." Angela's fingers curled into fists at her sides. This was her son, her whole life. The reason she worked 2 jobs and took night classes and skipped meals so he could eat. She wanted to scream at this woman, to remind her that the only reason the floors were shining and the counters were spotless was because of this boy's mother. But she saw again the bills stacked on the little table by her bed, the past due notices, the letter about the rent going up. So she forced herself to breathe. "Come on, Jamal," she said quietly. Go sit in the kitchen. I'll be done soon. Jamal nodded and walked away without looking back at the piano. Right before he turned the corner, though, he heard Victoria mutter, under her breath, loud enough for him to catch the words that cut deeper than anything else. I swear, Daniel is too soft. First he hires these people out of pity, then we have their kids crawling all over the place like we're running some kind of shelter. Jamal kept walking, the words sinking into his chest like stones. He told himself he didn't care. He told himself it didn't matter what some rich lady thought, but deep down, a part of him wondered if this was just how the world was always going to see him. In the kitchen, Jamal pulled out his notebook and pretended to do homework, but the numbers on the page blurred as his thoughts ran wild. He thought about how tired his mom had looked this morning, how she had held her back after getting out of bed. He thought about the way she had smiled when she told him they would have a little extra this month because of this cleaning job. He thought about the envelope she kept hidden in the top drawer at home, the one she said was for something big one day, maybe a car, maybe piano lessons, maybe a move to a place where the roaches didn't come out at night. He also thought about the man whose house this was, Daniel Hayes, the millionaire his mom always called Mr. Daniel. Jamal had only seen him once, a tall man with kind eyes, who had brought them both hot cocoa the first time they came. Any friend of Angela's is welcome here, he had said, ruffling Jamal's hair like an uncle. It had been the first time Jamal had seen a rich person act like a normal human being. But Mr. Daniel wasn't home today. Only Ms. Victoria was here, and she seemed to think this house was some kind of castle, and she was the queen. Jamal wondered why someone like Mr. Daniel, who had seemed so decent, would want to marry someone like her. Angela moved through the rest of the house quietly, cleaning with fast, practiced motions, her mind far away. She thought about Jamal's face when Victoria had yelled at him. She thought about the way her son had shrunk into himself, like he was trying to make his body smaller, to take up less space in a world that already tried to push him to the edges. Angela had promised herself long ago that she would protect him from that feeling as much as she could. She had failed sometimes. The world was loud and cruel and full of people like Victoria who thought money made them better. But Angela had also succeeded in ways no one saw, keeping him safe, keeping him out of trouble, keeping his grades up despite the chaos around them. Now though, in this big, beautiful house, she felt like she had walked her son straight into the mouth of the wolf. When Angela finished the upstairs bedrooms, she told herself she would say something to Victoria before they left. Maybe not today, maybe not with the sharp anger that still burned in her chest, but soon. She owed that to Jamal. Still, another part of her was afraid. Daniel had gone out of his way to hire her through the community center. He had been the one to offer more hours when he learned she was a single mom. She didn't want to seem ungrateful. She didn't want to risk the one steady job that made her feel like they might finally be climbing out of the hole life had thrown them into. She ran a cloth over the last nightstand and checked the time. Only an hour until they were done. Only an hour until she could take her son and leave this place that smelled like lemon polish and quiet judgment. Downstairs, Victoria poured herself a glass of white wine and scrolled through her phone, barely glancing at the cleaning woman who moved silently around her. To Victoria, Angela, and Jamal were like the flowers in the expensive vase or the art on the wall, things that were just there, part of the scenery. She had grown up in this world where someone always picked up the mess and someone else always said yes, ma'am, before she even finished a request. She didn't see herself as cruel. She saw herself as honest. People have their place, she had told her friend over brunch earlier that week. I worked hard to get where I am. I'm not going to feel bad because some people didn't, of course. Her hard work had started with a trust fund and private school and an internship. Her father arranged at his friend's company, but she didn't like to think about that part. It was easier to look at someone like Angela and tell herself that they could have what she had if they just tried as hard as she did. It was easier to believe that, than to see the systems and ceilings and locked doors that people like Angela faced every single day. As Angela wiped down the kitchen counters, Jamal whispered, "It's okay, Mom. I know you need this job. You don't have to say anything." Angela's hand paused mid. Her son was only 13, but sometimes he sounded older than she did. "It's not okay," she said softly. "Nobody talks to you like that. Not in front of me. Not anywhere." Jamal shrugged and tried to smile. "It's fine. She's just mad 'cause I almost broke her fancy piano." "You didn't break anything," Angela said, her voice sharper now. "And that piano? You're gonna have one just like it one day. Maybe better. You're gonna play on big stages, while people like her have to buy tickets just to hear you." She believed that. Jamal had a gift. He could hear a song once and play it back, his fingers moving over the cheap keyboard at home like they were born for it. The music teacher at school had begged Angela to sign him up for real lessons, but lessons cost money they didn't have. So for now, Jamal practiced alone, late at night, when most kids were playing games on their phones. "What if I don't get there?" Jamal asked quietly. "What if people always just see me like she does, like I'm some problem in their house?" Angela felt tears prick her eyes. She set the cloth down and pulled her son into a hug, holding him where the rich woman couldn't see. "Listen to me," she said into his hair. "You are not a problem. You are not the help. You are my son, and you are a child of God, and you are smart and kind and talented. Their house isn't the whole world. Remember that." Jamal nodded against her shoulder, soaking in her words, like they were the only thing keeping him standing. Angela wished she could wrap him in armor he could wear wherever he went. Something to protect him from every ugly word, every cruel look. All she had was this, her voice, her love, and the promise that she would fight for him as long as she had breath. Upstairs, Victoria's phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel, running late. "Flight delayed. Be home around 8. Sorry. You okay?" She typed back quickly. "Fine. Bored. Your cleaning lady brought her kid again. You really need to set some rules." Then set the phone down without hitting send. Something about the way Daniel talked about Angela made Victoria nervous. He always sounded grateful, like he owed Angela something. Victoria didn't like that. She liked things clear and simple. There was Daniel, the rich, kind man, who was going to make her life even easier. And there was everybody else. She pressed delete on the text instead of sending it, then poured herself another glass of wine. As the afternoon light softened into early evening, the house felt oddly quiet. Angela finished in the kitchen and moved to the last room on her list, Daniel's office. Jamal, left alone in the kitchen, pulled out his little keyboard from his backpack. He had brought it secretly, hoping maybe, just maybe, he could play in the big room with the grand piano when no one was watching. That dream was gone now, but the notes in his head still needed a way out. He set the keyboard on the table, turned the volume low, and began to play one of the songs he had written himself. The soft music floated through the air, slipping under doors and around corners. It drifted into the hallway, where Victoria was walking, and made her stop, frown, and follow the sound back to the kitchen. "What did I tell you?" she barked, storming in. Jamal's fingers froze on the plastic keys. I'm sorry," he stammered, reaching to turn it off. You were just doing exactly what I told you not to do," Victoria cut in, making noise, "acting like this is your place. I want you out. Now, you and your mother. Daniel might be soft, but I am not. I'm not going to let him turn this house into a daycare for the help's kids." Angela rushed in from the office, the feather duster still in her hand. "Ms. Victoria, please," she said, her voice shaking. "We're almost done," Mr. Daniel said. "I don't care what Daniel said," Victoria snapped. "This is my house too, and I'm setting some rules. Rule 1, no children running around. Rule 2, No one touches that piano or plays any kind of cheap toy instrument in my kitchen. Rule 3. If you don't like it, you can take your things and never come back. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Jamal's hand tightened on his keyboard. Angela felt anger rise like a wave inside her, higher than fear, higher than worry about the bills. For years I have cleaned houses for people who never even learned my name, Angela said slowly. I have picked up after their kids, scrubbed their bathrooms, watched them treat me like I was invisible. But I have never had someone talk about my child like he's trash. Not until you. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. If you have a problem with me, you say it to my face. You don't threaten my son. Victoria laughed, a cold, sharp sound. Oh, look at you, she said, getting brave. Don't forget who signs your check, Angela. Don't forget who owns this house. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. You think Daniel is going to choose you over me? You think he's going to care about some little tantrum from his maid when he has a wedding to plan? Be serious. Angela felt her face burn. She wanted to throw the duster at this woman, to grab her Louis Vuitton bag and dump it in the trash. But again, the image of the stacked bills flashed in her mind. Before she could answer, though, the front door opened. Cool evening air swept into the hallway, along with the sound of footsteps and a familiar voice calling, Angela. Jamal, you guys still here? Daniel Hayes walked into the kitchen a second later, dropping his suitcase by the door. He looked tired from travel, his tie loosened, his dark hair a little messy, but his smile came easy when he saw Angela and Jamal. Then he noticed Victoria's stiff posture, the tears in Jamal's eyes, the tension so thick you could almost see it. The smile faded. What's going on? He asked, his voice low. He saw the small keyboard on the table. He saw Victoria's wine glass clutched too tightly in her hand. He saw the way Angela stood slightly in front of Jamal, like a shield. Nothing important, darling, Victoria said quickly, slipping into a sweet tone. Just a little misunderstanding. Your cleaner's boy was messing with your piano. I was just explaining some house rules. Daniel's eyes moved from her to Jamal, and something in his face changed. It was like a curtain lifting, like a puzzle piece snapping into place. He took a slow step forward, really looking at the boyette, the shape of his nose, the set of his jaw, the way his eyes looked like a mirror of Daniel's own when he was that age. His gaze flicked to Angela, whose face had gone pale. For a second, everything else in the room disappeared. Daniel's voice came out as a whisper, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. My God, he said, his face draining of color. He looks just like me. The room went so quiet that even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Jamal blinked, confused. What? He said. Victoria frowned. What are you talking about? Angela's heart pounded so hard, she thought she might faint. She had known this moment might come one day. She had feared and hoped for it all at once. Daniel turned to her slowly, his eyes searching her face. Angela, he said, and there was a tremor in his voice now. Back in high school, before I left for college, you told me you were moving away to live with your aunt. You stopped answering my calls. I wrote you letters. I always wondered if there was something you weren't telling me. His gaze shifted back to Jamal, then to Angela again. Is Jamal my son? Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tile floor. Excuse me, she said, her voice shrill. What did you just say? But no one answered her. All eyes were on Angela. Angela felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. For 13 years, she had carried this secret alone. She had told Jamal his father was gone, had left out details because she didn't know how to explain them. She had watched from a distance as Daniel's name showed up in the news. As his company grew, as his life became something that looked like a movie, she had told herself he didn't need to know. She had told herself she was protecting Jamal, but standing here now, With her son being treated like trash in a house his blood helped build, she knew she couldn't keep hiding. Her voice shook, but the words came out clear. "Yes," she said. "He's your son, Daniel." The world seemed to tilt. Daniel grabbed the back of a chair like he needed help staying upright. Jamal stared at his mom, then at Daniel, then back again, his brain racing to catch up. My what?" he whispered. "Mom, what is he talking about?" Angela's eyes filled with tears. She reached for Jamal's hand. "Baby," she said softly, "remember how I told you your dad was someone I knew a long time ago? Someone who didn't know about you. This is him. This is Daniel." Jamal pulled his hand away like he'd been burned. "You knew?" he said, his voice breaking. "All this time, you knew who my dad was?" Angela nodded, shame flooding her. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said. "We were so young. He left for college. I didn't think he'd want. I didn't want to hold him back." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes shining. "Hold me back from what?" he said. "From the best thing that could have ever happened to me." Victoria looked between them, her face twisting in anger and fear. "This is insane," she said. "You can't just believe her. She's your house cleaner, Daniel. Of course she'd love to claim her kid is yours. Think about what that would mean. Money, a new life. This is a scam." Daniel turned on her so fast she flinched. "Don't you talk about her like that," he said, his voice sharp as glass. "Angela is not my house cleaner. She was my first love." His gaze softened as it moved back to Angela and Jamal. "She was the smartest girl in our whole school. She's the one who helped me fill out my first college application, who stayed up late quizzing me before exams. I begged her to come with me when I got that scholarship. When she said she couldn't, I thought it was because she didn't want that life. I never guessed." He trailed off, choking on the weight of what he had missed. Jamal's head spun. First he was the helps kid who wasn't allowed near the piano. Now this millionaire was calling him my son. Part of him wanted to run, to slam the door on all of it. Another part of him, the part that had watched boys his age play catch with their dads in the park. The part that had wondered what it would be like to have a father at his school concerts, leaned forward without meaning to. "If you cared so much," Jamal blurted, "why didn't you look for us? Why didn't you find us?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I did," he said. "For years. I called your grandma's old number. It was disconnected. I wrote letters. They came back, no such address. I even went to your old neighborhood once, but the house had been sold. Eventually, I told myself she must have moved on and wanted to be left alone. I told myself not to be selfish." His voice dropped. "I was wrong. So wrong." In the weeks that followed, everything changed and everything hurt. There were tests, of course. A DNA test that came back with numbers no one could fight. Jamal was Daniel Hayes's son. The news never reached the press. Daniel made sure of that. He didn't want his son's life to become a headline. But inside the house, secrets had blown the walls apart. Victoria packed her things and moved out within days, slamming doors and threatening Daniel with lawyers he knew couldn't touch the truth. "You're throwing away your future over some old fling in her charity case," she shouted as she left. "You're going to regret this." Daniel watched her go without a word, for the first time. He saw clearly what he had almost married someone who saw love as a deal and people as tools. With Victoria gone, the house felt emptier but cleaner, like a storm had passed. Daniel asked Angela and Jamal to sit down with him at the big wooden table in the kitchen, the same one where Jamal had played his little keyboard. His hands shook as he spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, looking at Angela. "Not for not being there, not for living this big life while you were struggling. I can't change the past, but if you'll let me, I want to change the future, for both of you." He turned to Jamal. "I want to be your father, not just on paper. I want to show up at your school concerts at your games, at your life. I want to hear your music. I want to help you get that piano you keep staring at." Jamal listened, arms crossed, walls high. "You can't just walk in now and fix everything," he said. "You can't make up all those years." Daniel nodded. "You're right," he said. "I can't, but I can start with today." Angela watched them, her heart pulled in two directions. She had built her life around being independent, around not needing anyone. But watching Jamal look at Daniel, she saw something in her son's eyes that broke her resolve, a quiet, aching hope. She thought about all the nights she had prayed for help she couldn't name. Maybe this was it. Maybe it was late. Maybe it was messy. But maybe it was still help. "We move slow," she said finally. "No big changes overnight. No cameras. No fancy announcements. You come to our world first, Daniel, before you pull Jamal into yours." Daniel nodded, relief washing over his face. "Deal," he said, and he meant it. So Daniel started showing up in small, simple ways. He came to Jamal's school on a Tuesday night to hear him play at the band concert, slipping into a back row seat with a baseball cap pulled low. When Jamal looked up from the stage and saw him there, clapping louder than anyone, something inside the boy's chest loosened. Daniel drove Angela to the grocery store and insisted on paying, not as a handout, but as a tiny payment on the mountains of unpaid debt he owed. He asked Angela questions about her classes, about her dreams, about the envelope in her drawer. "I was saving for a car," she admitted, "so I wouldn't have to drag Jamal on 2 buses to get everywhere. Or maybe for piano lessons. I hadn't decided." Daniel smiled. "How about both?" he said. One Saturday morning, Daniel pulled up outside their apartment with a used but solid car and the keys to a small music school he had just bought on the west side. "This is for you," he told Angela, handing her the car keys. "And this," he told Jamal, opening the doors of the school, "is for you and kids like you. Free lessons. Real teachers. No one telling you you don't belong." Jamal walked into the room with rows of pianos, each one waiting like a promise. He ran his fingers across the keys of the nearest one and felt tears sting his eyes. This time, when he pressed a key, no one yelled at him. The sound was rich and full, filling the space. It sounded like a door opening. Months later, Daniel hosted a small gathering at his house. Not the kind of party he used to throw, full of investors and people who only cared about their names on guest lists, but a different kind. Jamal's music teacher, Angela's pastor, a couple of kids from Jamal's school band. They all sat in the living room, drinks in hand, snacks on plates, the grand piano polished and ready. Jamal sat on the bench, his back straight, his fingers hovering above the keys. This was the same piano Victoria had once guarded like a dragon, the same one Jamal had been told he wasn't good enough to touch. Now Daniel sat beside him, not to play, but to listen, one hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder. Before Jamal started, Daniel cleared his throat. "I want to say something," he said, looking around the room. "This house used to be a place where I showed off what I had. The cars, the art, the view. I thought that made me rich. But the truth is, I was poor as long as I cared more about things than people." He glanced at Angela, then at Jamal. "Someone I almost married once yelled at this boy for daring to touch this piano. She talked about him like he was trash, like his mother was just a help. That day, I walked into my own house and realized 2 things. One, that I'd almost given my life to someone who had no respect for the people who make this world work. And 2, that I had a son I never knew about, a son I should have been fighting for all along." His voice broke, but he kept going. "I can't undo what's been done, but I can tell the truth now. And the truth is this: the real worth of a home, of a life, isn't measured by what you own, but by how you treat the people who walk through your door." Jamal looked up at his father, then at his mother standing in the doorway, tears on her cheeks and pride in her eyes. He set his fingers on the keys and began to play, pouring all the hurt and hope and healing of the past months into the song. The notes rose and fell, filling every corner of the room that once held only quiet judgment. When he finished, the room stayed silent for a long heartbeat, then exploded in applause. Angela clapped the hardest. Daniel wiped his eyes openly. Jamal smiled, a real, wide smile that made him look like the kid he still was, not just a boy who had been told he didn't belong. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Angela stood alone in the living room, looking at the piano. She thought about the first time she had walked into this house, scared and hopeful and tired. She thought about Victoria's voice ringing through the air. "Kids like you don't belong in this house." She smiled, because now she knew the truth. Kids like Jamal not only belonged in this house, they were the ones who filled it with real richness. As she turned off the lights and headed toward the door, she whispered a simple prayer of thanks, not for the money or the car or the music school, but for the courage that had brought the truth into the open. And in that quiet room where a cruel voice had once tried to make a child feel small, the lesson of it all hung in the air, like the last soft note of Jamal's song. The way you treat the people you think are beneath you is the clearest measure of what you're really worth.